Guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're learning how to make a skirt with Basque effect. If it's something you're interested in learning, keep watching and let's get started. I'm going to fold a piece first. I'll be using as my front piece. It's folded into two and I'm running a line at this point which will serve as my waist point and my starting line. So from this point now, I'm going to take my other measurements. Okay. I'm just checking to ensure I have enough for my hip circumference. Now, my hip circumference is 40 divided by 4. I have 10 plus an extra inch, which is about 1 inch for my seam allowance, so it works perfectly. So from this edge now I'm going to take my hip point, which is 8 inches. Then for the full length of the skirt, there will be ruffles at the down part of it, so you have to subtract the length of your ruffles depending on how long you want it to be or how short you want it to be. Okay, it totally depends on you. You can also start yours from the hip area. All right. I don't know if you understand. Like you can decide to end it at the length of this part of the skirt at the hip area and then extend your ruffles down. Okay. But me, I didn't want my skirt to be so short. Okay. And I just went down and marked 12 inches, sorry, for the full length of my skirt. Okay, that's because I didn't want it to be so short. I wanted it to be long, all right? But you can decide to start it from your hip area, like I said. Now I went ahead to mark quarter of my waist. I marked 1 inch for that, and like I said, I'll be using 2 inches for my seam allowance. All right, so I'll repeat the same process at the hip point, mark my hip circumference, quarter of my hip circumference. All right, then I'm going to add my 2 inches for my seam allowance. Now you can decide to use 1 inch, all right, or 1.5 inch or 2 inches. It totally depends on you at this point. Okay, so like I said earlier, if you can decide to make your connection from this point, all right, that from the hip, and then just connect it down. But I wanted a little allowance from the hip area where I'm going to make my joining, so I came down by 2 inches. So from that point I'm going to rule a line to meet the edge of this other part. Okay, so I'm using my straight rule for this. So I'm just going to make a connection from this end to the other end. All right, so you can see what we have here after I finish marking that out. So if you want yours to be longer, you just have to take a longer length. If you want yours to be shorter, you go ahead and take your desired measurement. So we're going to make our other connections to the waist area right now. Right? So this is all we have for the front piece of this. Now I hope you know I'm just cutting the front part of this first, and then I will cut out the back later. So go ahead and cut this out because this is all we have. All right, you can see how this connection looks like. Now this 1 inch there is for our dart. Remember that that doesn't extend to the hip area, it's just around the waist to give it a firm fitting. All right. So go ahead to cut it out. You can see when I open this up how this looks like. You can see the shape we have there. Okay, it's already having the Basque effect shape. So we're going to keep this aside and fold another piece for the back. Okay, so I've already folded a piece for the back. I'm actually using 1 yard of fabric, so I'm trying to manage my fabric properly, so it will be enough for what I want. Okay, I went ahead to place the front piece on a folded piece that I'll be using for the back. Now, the difference between the back and the front is the zip allowance. All right, so at the waist area, I took 1.5 inch for my zip allowance. At the hip area, I'm taking 2 inches for my zip allowance. All right, the other measurements will come in later on. Now, remember, it's a Basque effect skirt, so it needs to have that V shape at the front and also at the back. Okay, so the connection I'm making right now, I'm still going to modify it later on. Okay, ensure you watch closely so that you don't get lost while doing this. All right, so I'll just go ahead and cut this out. Okay. So you can see what I did at initially, all right? So we need the back part of this to also have the V shape, that's the back's effect shape, all right? So what we're going to do is to make a connection from the hip area. You can see how I'm cutting this out, all right? So that's how you're going to do yours for it to come out looking nicely. So this is what we have at the end of the day for the front and the back. I'm going ahead to measure my dart position. Now, to get your dart position, measure your bust span, which is the nipple to nipple measurement. For me, it is 7 divided by 2. I have 3.5 plus 1/2 inch to that of allowance, okay, for stitching it down. So I marked down 4 inches and I'm just making a notch on it so that I don't make any mistake while I'm stitching my darts down. And I'm going ahead to make a notch for my zip allowance area also. Okay, since I will not be using a lining piece for this, I need this to come out accurately and beautiful. So I'm just making marks on the back part of my fabric because the front and back looks quite similar to each other. All right, so I just made marks there so that I can determine the front from the back, like the right part of the material from the wrong part of the material. I hope you understand that. Okay, so this is what we have after I finish. The next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and impute my darts at their rightful positions. Okay, so the length of our dart, I'll be showing you how I'm going to do this. Okay, so you're making your dart on the wrong part of your material. Okay, the length of our dart will be 5 inches. Then after marking your 5 inches length of that, from the waist area, the point where the dart mark is, you go in and out by 1/2 inch on both sides. Okay, that is just the idea of how to do it. Okay, so I've gone ahead to do it. This is what it looks like after I finish placing down my dart, stitching down my dart to the fabric. You can see how it looks. That's the front, and this is the back piece of our skirt. I've also gone ahead to stitch down the darts, all right, and I went ahead to close down the zip allowance area, leaving the up part. All right, I left the top part where my zip is going to sit, which is about 7 inches of length. Okay, so depending on you, your length of zipper can be more or less. All right, just a comfortable length where your hip can pass through. All right, so after doing that, I want to join my front and back together right now. So I'm going to mark out. Remember, the allowance I took added to this was 2 inches. Okay, that's 2 inches stitching allowance. So I'm going ahead to mark 2 inches on the sides of the skirt. So I'm marking it at the front side and I'm going to make the connection like so. So I'll go ahead and repeat the same process for the other side of our skirt. So we have the lines matching accurately. So whatever you use for your allowance, be it 1 inch, be it 1.5 inch, be it 2 inches like myself, just go ahead and mark that down on your skirt and then make a connection to them. Okay, it's going to help while you're stitching down the front and back together. So what I'll do next is to place my fabric front facing front, that's right side of fabric facing the right side of fabric of the back part of our skirt, and I'll go ahead and stitch down the sides of this after I've finished placing this down. All right, so just place your fabric front facing front, right side of your material to right side of material, just this way, and then go ahead and stitch it down on both sides where you made your marks. All right, so ensure they're well placed while stitching down so that you don't have to lose after stitching. So I've gone ahead to do that. As you can see, this is what I have at the end of the day. Our skirt is coming in together gradually. So the next thing we want to do is to take the measurement around our curve. That is the V part of it. So I'll take my measurement from one end of the curve to the other part of the curve. Now this measurement can vary depending on your size, your body size, your body measurement. It can vary, it can be more, it can be less. All right, so by the time I finish taking my measurement, I have 48 at the end of the day. Now what we're going to do to 48 is you either multiply it by 2, 2.5 inch, 3 inch, and thereon. Okay, it totally depends on your quantity of fabric and also depends on how you want it to be. Right, for me, I want mine to be quite full at the end of the day. So remember I said I measured 48 out of that. So you can decide for it to be 2 inch, like times it by 2 times by 3 or thereabout. Okay, so I want, like I said, I want mine to be long, like to be full, to have a lot of effect, that effect. So I went ahead to cut out a fabric for mine, and I already hemmed the down. I actually had to join this because I wanted this to be full. This is like a remnant of a fabric I have. You can decide to do a loose gather stitch, okay, at the other end of this to give it that volume before attaching it to your skirt piece. Okay, like I said, it totally depends on what you want and how you want yours to look like. Okay, so what I want to do is to manually gather this around my skirt. Okay, so I went ahead to lose the down part of the skirt so that it is easier for me to work with. So I'll manually gather this like so on my machine, placing the front to the right side of the fabric and then gather it all around this, and I'll show you how this looks like. Okay, so I've done that. This is what we have at the end of the day. Our skirt is coming in nicely and gradually. You can see how full mine is. Okay, so the length of my ruffles is about 8 inches. Okay, but I added extra inches so I can hem the down of it. Okay, and also extra inches to add to the top. So for my band, I've gone ahead to cut out a band of 4.5 inch. Okay, this is the half-inch extra is to serve as my stitching allowance, and I went ahead to iron and interface into this. So I folded this into 2 because I will just be placing this around this to stitch it down. Sorry. So what I'll do is to place this at the front part of my skirt, ensuring that I'm matching properly, and then I am going to go ahead to stitch it down all around. After that, I'll go ahead and fix the zipper. So I finished doing this. This is our skirt. This is the final look of our skirt. I'll go ahead to interlock the edges later. So let me know if you enjoy watching this video. Let me know if you'll be doing your own part of making a Basque effect skirt. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, and if you've not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching and bye.